the ship was a week late arriving in Youghal. Now, the part here was, the schedule was that it would be filmed in a fortnight, 14 days. But on account of this uh, leaking ship, there it took 3 weeks. Now, on this Friday morning, the whole universe, if you like, seemed to have descended on Youghal and on the Market Square, and you had cameramen and newspaper people from New York Herald Tribune, Paris War, all the papers, magazines, and one television station. There was only one television station at the time, and
How much? How many ships were
oh
here?
yes, well now they brought two old schooners from Arklow. They were belonged to the Kearns family down there, and they put two on the quayside here, one outside Moby Dick's now, and one outside the market house. And there was the James Postlethwaite was there, and Harvest King was behind the market house. And up here at the top of the dock here, they had Commander Arbuthnot's Brixham trawler called the Rylands. And the Pequod then was berthed here, where the trawlers are here. And they used those three ships here as more or less extras, to make the port look busy. And as well as that, behind here in Buttermore, they erected a lot of masts, so that over the roofs of the houses, you would think that there was more ships up there, and also behind the market house. And a good story about the tree here in the dock. That was they were called afterwards the James Postlethwaite and the Royal and Harvest King. They were tip-beat. I forgot. I can't remember now exactly what the third one was, but there was two. They had a lot of extras and one workmen, and one of them was Georgie Webster, the Lord to mercy on him. He was living up in Sarsfield's Terrace. He was a seaman, and he had taken a holidays, and he was helping to rig the ships along with Noel Donoghue, who was an extra who was helping out with the ships as well. And once they had started filming, we had to go to the court and get an extension, because all this filming would start at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we applied to the court for an extension which covered more or less the whole town. And we was open at 6 o'clock in the morning until, say, 12 or 1 o'clock the next morning. Now, the story about was that Georgie Webster and Noel Donoghue and all these people, you get paid every day if you're once the shooting had started. All the extras and the women and all that were taken on. Every day they were paid 37 and sixpence, and of course that was a heck of a lot of money. And the bar would be kind of full at 6 o'clock in the morning. They'd be all coming in, and the going was pretty tough. And because we had the sitting room as a restroom for the stars, it meant that except Gregory Peck now would be in and out every day, and up in the sitting room with John Houston, that was his restroom, and the whole world, if you like that, were any friends of it all, were up and down the stairs every day. And the business in the bar, of course, boomed and boomed. It was like sitting on top of an oil well.
Oh.
Now,
had you any chance to talk to those?
I had. Oh yes, I spoke to all of them. Gregory Peck was terrible shy. But I finish now with that piece there about Noel Donoghue. And one morning anyhow, Georgie and Noel Donoghue came along, and Georgie looked at his watch and he said, "Oh God," he says, "'tis 5 to 6 and he's not open yet." Now, you're asking me about the stars. Now, first of all, John Houston was the kindest and most patient man I ever met. And he had his secretary was Laurie Sherman. And we were getting at this stage now the publicity that we were getting. Every newspaper, every magazine, even the top 20s, they had a piece about Moby Dick. And I often said to him, look, John, I said, what will you have to drink? He said, we're getting such publicity here, we couldn't possibly buy it. You know, it was out of, he'd say, I'll have a glass of Guinness. And his secretary, that's all they'd ever have. And Richard, now, Noel Purcell, Richard Basehart, Leo Jen, all those. Leo Jen was a real gentleman altogether. He seemed to be very studious. The rest of them would be kind of light-hearted, and he'd be always studying. Richard Basehart, Noel Purcell, they were good hardy boys. Noel Purcell drink a fair few gin and tonics for you. And the amount of sherry at that time that we sold, you know, which has hardly gone out of fashion altogether now, the Palomino green labelled, it would float the Pequod for you there in the dock.
Yeah.
Now, have you any?
What is it? It'll be early morning now.
Oh yes, they'd be starting at early morning. Oh well,
yeah.
Now
how many old people were involved in the actual shooting?
Of it? Well, now they had a whole lot of oldish women. They recruited you. The older you were, and maybe the more wrinkled you are.
Rakish and takish.
Rakish. They'd put you up in front of the cameras, and the first morning that they started shooting, they had some of the younger girls, and they all came along with makeup and everything on, and they all had to wipe it off. There was no makeup and no that sort of thing at all in 1846. By the way, was when the story was written, and Ishmael, who was Leo, I said his name there now a second, Richard Basehart, he was the principal character in it.
Yes. Would you name any of the old Youghal people now that who would have been in that?
Yeah, well, we maybe I
just a few.
I could name a few, but later on maybe I show you over and I can call them all out here.
Right.
It doesn't come very easy to me now, but I can name quite some of the men. Where there was Frank Owens, Dick White, Hurley's. We'll wait a while for that, because it doesn't come right to me.
Yes. Had your people come in from all over the country?
Oh yes, all over. Gosh, all over the country. they had while this film shooting was. Oh yes, now I better come back again. Now all along here on the quayside, all the houses were turned into resembling New Bedford. But down along the centre of the market square, then they had a whole town scene. The scene was the whole town and of New Bedford, and just in front of down along by the courthouse now, and down that side, they had private houses with gardens, and the story starts, you see, in November. It was in November 1846. So they made gardens up, and Murray's men went out and they cut sods off along the strip of the road and made grass lawns, and then they cut down some bushes. But they had to pluck all the leaves off of the bushes because it was November. Now, on the left-hand side, looking down the market square, where the fire station is and the tourist office, they built a church there. And that was the crowd scenes then. In that particular part of it, well, they came from various angles and they all went into the church.
Yeah. What about the stars? Would they have stayed here in Youghal while the filming was being done?
Well, most of them, the principal ones, they had taxis to take them up and down to Cork, their hotels in Cork. But all the hotels and guest houses were crowded out with various stars and painters and contractors and electricians and all the rest of it. Now, wait, pause a second there.
Yeah.
If you think of something.
Who supplied the pigs for the scene?
Well, no, I think it was Jimmy Brown. They had. Oh, well, now we come back on the pierhead here now. You see, the lot of this part was just, we were the port in New Bedford, and they had all the load pigs and chickens and what have you onto the ship. Johnny Collins now outside in they're the Greyhound track, opposite the Greyhound track, near the grotto at Seafield. He was one of the men that was carrying the pigs in his back, and another chap was a man called Lord Kilgallen, who had a place up in Leitrim. And of course, the Life magazine now in Time, they had their whole photographer and reporter here for a whole fortnight. And the same way was the New York Herald Tribune. There was a famous correspondent called Upwald. And when all these men arrived the first morning that I was telling you about, Houston had a public relations officer here the whole time. And when he bring all these people along, they'd collar myself and they want to know, were you married, were you single, what had you for your breakfast, how many barrels of Guinness did you sell? And I got to write up in all the papers and magazines, and you'd be photographed and autographed. Oh yes, well, autographs then was a new angle. Well, this is a good story then. There was one young girl, this lady over living across there by Pat McMahon's house, and she said to me one day, would I ever get her some autographs? And now I have Noel Donoghue and Ty Kelleher and Jack Brown at the railway, who was all coming in the morning. We'd be all working, starting at 6 o'clock or before, tidying up the bar, stocking up and everything. And this particular morning, anyhow, we after a very busy Sunday, used to be a fierce busy day altogether. And on Monday morning, one of the first mornings when they were shooting this picture, when they were shooting the film, I saw Melvin Johns. He was one of the actors in the film, and his part was he was the owner he was a part owner of the Pequod, and he was coming up the market with all dressed up with his. They were, by the way, Quakers, and he had a frock coat and collar and tie up here and a big tall hat. And gosh, I saw him heading up the market square, and I said to myself, inside the bar now, God, I must get his autograph. And he came in the hall door, up the stairs, and I dashed out after him, and I said, he's just coming down again. I said, can I have he said, there's no toilet paper in the bathroom. It'd be the last thing you think about. Oh, fierce day, Monday, Sunday, the whole Republic of Ireland and every motor car and everybody came down, and you had so many things to think about. Well, now we better come back to Gregory Peck then. Gregory Peck only appears on the film when the ship is well at sea, and he was on the quayside 2 or 3 days, and they were carrying out fit tests and things, with him. And when I heard about this fella, Gregory Peck, we didn't know much about him. And we said, who the heck is he like? And every woman and mother and daughter and everything in the whole Republic of Ireland and the whole of the West, it seemed to me, of all of England, all abandoned their husbands and their families and their sweethearts and everything, and they came to Youghal. And really and truly, when he was on the quay there over here at the pier heads one day, a couple of hours, or he'd be outside the door along the edge here, you couldn't get within you could only see him over the crowd, but there was women from everywhere.
Yeah.
And
he was the main character.
Oh yes, Gregory Peck was Captain Ahab. Now Ahab was mentally deranged, and when he took his ship to sea, he abandoned all the shoals of whales, and he kept chasing after this Moby Dick, the white whale. Well, I better come back again now there and talk to you about another thing. What in New Bedford in its heyday had something like over 300 whaling ships, and they had something like, there was about 10,000 people involved in the trade, and it was a very wealthy port. And most of the ship owners and captains of the vessel ships had fine houses built, and on the roofs of all the houses they had what they'd call a veranda or a widow's walk. They built on a lot of the houses here, they put these widow's walk, which was like a veranda up on top of the roof, and they were there for the purpose of, very often these ships went away and they would be maybe 2 or 3 years away on a whaling. It isn't like today. And their wives and of the crew, the captains and the mates, of course, had these beautiful houses, and they'd be up on the roof looking out to see were their ship coming back. And there was on the house here behind me, which is now Doherty's. They had a widow's walk up on the roof, and on part of Moby Dick's over here, they had a widow's walk there, and they had some more of them around. Now, another point, that problem that they had, there was no electric poles or telegraph poles in New Bedford, and how they camouflaged them to make them invisible. They often painted them white. And when they focus in on them, you wouldn't. They blended in. They camouflaged them, and they blended in. And there was no such thing as having chimney pots. Like if you look at some of the houses here now, there are chimney pots in the roof and up on the old girls' barrack, and they all had to be taken down and stored away, and all put back again.
And how long did the whole thing take?
Well, now, the actual shooting of the picture took 3 weeks, but they were about 6 weeks nearly getting ready, and they were a fortnight packing up again. And the crowds that came, and there'd be a special bus come down every day from Cork and collect all the spare civic guards out of all the stations, bringing them down. And you might drive up the main street, or on the Sundays especially, you could drive up, come into town. All the quayside down here was closed off several days. There was now on this particular Sunday now that before the shooting on Monday, they had the whole quay, the whole place closed off, and they were putting down cobblestones and painting them on the road to make like the old cobblestone streets of New Bedford. And they had there was 2 houses just here up in Barry's Lane there, Mrs. McGrath and Mrs. Boland, and they took them over and they made them into the Peter Coffin's, an inn. See, and when the first shots that you see on the film, There's Portscourt Park. And then it comes to looking, Baysheart as Ishmael is looking down over the sweep in Dungarvan. And then the next scene he comes, he's speaking here then, and he says in 1846, when he got this urge to go to sea again, he comes along and along the quay here. He starts up here and he runs along to his lashing rain. First brigade are pushing down, and he runs along and he comes along down past the quay, Moby Dick's there, and turns up to the right hand side into Mrs. McGrath's and Mrs. Boland's house. Now, we take a break now. Pause a second there. I get my thoughts again. All right? Yeah. Right behind me here on my left hand side at my back, you're in the market dock here in Youghal. This was the centerpiece of the film from shooting from Moby Dick, because it resembled the old New Bedford. And on the pier head, on the inside of the pier here, on my left, the Pequod was moored. All the loading of the ship with pigs and food and harpoons and all the rest was carried out on that. And the day then that the ship was sailing on its voyage, chasing the whales, all the women and mothers and mothers and wives of the crew were assembled on the quay waving it goodbye. But on the postman, we were all invited to the showboat, and all the stars were there, and all the stars done their piece, and we had Mick Delahunty's band, and there was a bar downstairs, and there was a restaurant and everything, and the whole place was free. And that went on until about 3 o'clock or 3:30 in the morning. I came back and I was going to bed, and I had my shirt over my back, pulling it off, and the next thing was, it was a loud knock down on the hall door. Put my head out the window and said, "Oh, what do you want?" And the boy said, "What are you doing up there?" I said, "I'm going to bed, of course." I said, "What do you want going to bed for? Sure, we'll be starting again at 6 o'clock in the morning. You might as well come down, make the tea." Came down and made the tea, and no time it was 6 o'clock, and they were all back in action again, and they put the last shots in the can. They were finished about 9 o'clock in the morning, and all the cast jumped over to Moby Dick's, and we had a big party. It was a continuation of the party that was in the showboat, and we were at 9 o'clock in the morning anyhow. The bar was packed, and then the Irish lads would sing the song, and then the Englishmen would sing, and about sometime around shortly afterwards, about 9 o'clock in the morning, Sergeant Lupton was cycling up on his bicycle going up to the barracks, and we had, remember now that we had applied for an extension for a fortnight, but because of the Pequod springing a leak, which I told you about, the shooting went on a week longer than was expected, and we couldn't get an extension for the last week. And Sergeant Lupton is cycling up the market on August Saturday morning, when everybody should be having their breakfast, and the whole Moby Dick's bar was packed to the brim, and there was a sea shanty was going on, heave away, haul away, as loud as they could, the whole place swaying. And Sergeant Lupton got off his bicycle, came in at the door and looked at me, and he said, "You know, you're not supposed to be open." But I said, "What can we do?" And he had to just get up on his bicycle and go away again.
And would all the ships have pulled out from here then to...
No, they weren't. The Pequod would just maybe sail past the lighthouse. It sailed away out past the lighthouse, and that finished. the filming of Moby Dick as far as Youghal was concerned. We were the port in New Bedford. Then it went to, they went over to Fishguard, and they filmed a lot of it off at Stumble Head. Myself and Hans Manshausen, who was living here at the time, we, about the middle of September, we took the boat from Waterford over to Fishguard, and we arrived at Fishguard about 7 o'clock in the morning, and we met some of the crew, and the first thing they said, oh gosh, God, he said, we wish we were back in Youghal. Nobody has had much time for us here. And later on that day then, we went up to, we went out on the, we went out on the Pequod to watch some of the filming at sea off Stumble Head. And then we came back in and walked around Fishguard Wednesday afternoon. And of course I wanted to get some postcards and sweets and things to bring back because it was my first time in Wales. And to get some postcards, and the lady said to me, oh, she said, I'm awfully sorry, we're only open today for the sale of afternoon teas. We can't sell it here. So I had to come out anyhow. I got no postcards, and then I went to the shop next door and I got, I told them, the owner of the shop, I said, we're only over from Ireland for a day, and he said, well, okay, we'll give you the postcards, but you must put them inside your pocket and don't let have a look around so that the police won't be outside. We'll be charged with breaking the shopping, the law, you see. So he came into the next shop next door with me then, and he said, give that gentleman whatever he wants. He says, there's none of the police around. Cut.
Yes. Now, in the actual filming of the sea, you know, it was a very rough sea on the film.
Oh yeah, well,
the weather has been awfully windy. Or
usually around in September, where you get the equinoctial gales. Now, one of the actors was Seamus Kelly. He was Quidnunc in the Irish Times, and he had suffered from piles, and he had, after having an operation, he used to go around with an air cushion. And he was on one of the what would I call him now, the actual whaling boats that rode after the whale and harpooned them. And the poor man must have had an awful time because the sea was so rough, and his bottom was fairly sore.
No, was the whale kept in a house or a shed?
No. When we went, there was no whales in Youghal. All the actual whaling scenes were done. The live whaling, they went to the Canary Islands, and they got live scenes there then. And then the artificial whale was made in Fishguard, and they had tubular steel scaffolding and 50-gallon oil drums, and some of these ones were 50 or 60 feet long, covered with canvas and burlap and painted, and they were quite big yokes, and they towed that whale then by a tug, which would be maybe a half a mile ahead.
Yeah. Well, he looked a real whale in the film, didn't he?
Oh yeah, but what was really, I've been looking at this film now every day, and I must say that I couldn't find any fault or any technical things wrong with it. Everything is so perfect. Yeah, the film itself, and the more you look at it, the more you appreciate the skill and the directorship of John Huston. He was really a perfectionist.
Who piloted the boats? Was there somebody from Youghal to pilot the boats out?
Well, now, when the ship, the Pequod, arrived in the harbour, Jimmy Delaney and Moss Gyrey were the pilots to bring the ship into the dock here, and they got something like £35 each for the days that they would be doing that. That was it was a colossal amount of money.
And how about the people of Youghal? How many were employed in the actual the putting up of masts and houses? And
oh well, now I suppose there could be maybe there could be 30 or 40. I'm not sure exactly, but you know, there was quite a lot of people employed, and you get all sorts of unusual jobs. There was quite a while now. There was Butler the painter. I can't remember his first name. And Jack Watson's uncle of the stained glass. He was employed also there to paint the name Pequod on the ship. Apparently, it was a room of Moby Dick's that was used by John Hewson as a restroom for his stairs. Looking out the window, I'm looking down on the pierhead and the market dock. This is what he would see as he would look at the scene set up for the filming of Moby Dick. And right in front of you here, there now, where there's a white lorry and two trawlers, that would be where the Pequod was butted. With Gregory Peck, and because we had given them such help when they came to Youghal, that they, instead of blotting out our name, they brought it out more and made it stand out more. Now on the pierhead here you have the crowd scene with some of the actors who were taking, some of the extras who were taking part in there. I leave it at that. Now on this side, now you have on the road down to the pierhead in front of the Youghal Fishermen's Co-op. On the right hand side, you can see the trawler, the trawler which was the Three Brothers, owned by Commander Arbuthnot. That'll do. They are getting ready there for the filming. And on the center now, in this picture here, you have on the left-hand side, you have all the barrels that were brought from the Irish distillers for representing the barrels for the whale oil. And on the left-hand side as well, you have a warehouse that was built temporary for giving the appearance of New Bedford. You can see the crowd scenes there with the people walking around looking on, and there's a CIE bus there to the right hand side, and that black part of the building there is T.P. Welch's, which is now Pasley's supermarket. Now on this scene outside the bar here in Moby Dick's, you have Kevin McClory, assistant art director, myself, Tom Clegg, who was the harpooner in the film, Noel Purcell, who was the ship's carpenter, Ryle Dano, who was Elijah, Hans Manshausen, who had a jeweller shop on the North Main Street, Christy Lynch, and my brother Tom Linehan, who was not too clear there on the right hand side. This scene is a family from Dublin who are related to the Currans down in Strand Street. Here you have the actual photograph of Richard Basehart as Ishmael entering the Spouters Inn. That was the house there was Dan McGrath's and Mrs. Boland's. Queequeg's, tomahawk and pipe. That's a drawing, an artist's impression of the Spouters Inn with Richard Basehart as Ishmael going in board, going into the inn. Leo Jen, who acted as Starbuck the mate. In private life he was an attorney, and I believe he took part in the prosecuting council on the Nuremberg trials, which were the trials held by the Allies after the war on the German generals. On this photograph you have a scene outside the church in the Market Square, and on that picture the driver is Connie Daly Latimer from Cork Hill, and you have some actors from Cork City. I think actually the man on the right hand side was Dick Donegan. Now on this photograph you have Pope O'Mahony, who was a BL, and he was taking part as an extra, and Tony Inglis, who was the art director of the film. They're reading the Cork Examiner. On this scene now, this is actually a scene from the double slips. It had nothing to do with the filming of Moby Dick, but it just shows you the trade and the business that was being carried on in the town at the time. This is another photograph, more or less at the same time, possibly later, looking down the jail steps into the Market Square. The ships there that's a later, because the other ones were on it. They were topsail schooners. This is also about 1900, is it, or 1920? 1900. It's a schooner at the back of the Market Square, and the Market House. This photograph here is a scene of exporting sprats in the 1920s. 27, 28, there was great catches of sprats, and that was a Scottish trawler that used to come over and take the barrels of them away. Here you have the new ferry boat that the Urban Council bought in 1930, and on board they had members of the Urban Council and their families on their first outing. This scene is from the mouth of the harbour around 1910, 1920. It gives the names of the ships and the tide, and the weather was suitable, so they all sail out away to England. I'd imagine to be more nearer to 1900. This photograph now, you're looking across from the pier head over to the Market Square, and in the centre there you can see the courthouse and the ship there, and the main one was the James Postlethwaite that came from Arklow, and she's known as the Devil Dam, and on the stern of her was the Harvest King. They were both brought from Arklow. And then there's a small white whaling boat there in the dock underneath it. That would be the type of whale that when they were chasing the whale, they'd get into these boats and go off harpooning the whales. This photograph here now is more extras, with the late Paddy O'Gorman, chairman of the All-UDC, sitting in the centre, and on his left-hand side you can see, with his hand up to his forehead, is Richard Basehart as Ishmael. So here you have another photograph or a drawing from the New Bedford Whaling Museum, where the crew are unloading a barrel of whale oil. This is actually a drawing, I think. See the size of the barrels, and a ship could be often 2 or 3 years at sea. Here now myself, we're rolling barrels of Guinness into the yard, and on that particular day, because they were shooting outside the door, Jack Brown and the railway car couldn't come down to the quay, and we had to roll them down from O'Reilly Street. That photograph was taken by Time magazine. There'd be about 20 or 30 kegs of Guinness come at the time. At that time, of course, yes, we'd be open at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that's another photograph there of John Houston. We had a license to open from 6 in the morning until 12 at night. Here a photograph again of the old men who were taking part as extras. You had Coakley, Frank Owens, Bill Healy, Danny Hurley, I think. I'm not sure. Then you further down you have one of the nuns, Morris Welsh, and Dick White. That's outside the British Legion. Now this photograph is again of Elijah, as Ryle Dano as Elijah foretelling where the ship would be lost and they'd be all drowned except one. Here you have another photograph looking from our own hall door across the quay over to the pierhead, and with the crowd scenes and the ship James Postlethwaite, and on the left hand side the warehouse erected especially for the job. And then you have John Houston on the right looking at Gregory Peck and his makeup as Captain Ahab. I suppose studying it would be a better way to see it. Richard Basehart as Ishmael, he's climbing on board the Pequod. Here you have another scene where they're getting the street scene ready for on a Sunday morning. They were making up the scene for the street of New Bedford, and they're painting the road and making potholes in it, and the gardens on the left hand side, and the scene would be set in November 1846, and they had to go out and cut down trees and bushes and put them in the gardens there on the left hand side and pluck all the leaves off them, because it was November, and that was the month of July 1954. And on the right hand side there was the church where oh gosh, now I can't remember his name, preached the sermon, Orson Welles. Here you have, in the center of the picture, you have the Pequod, and under the stern of it is the Lismore Board of Conservators motorboat, which was acting as a tug, and on the right hand side you have again the Pequod. You have James Postlethwaite as the Devil Dam, and you can see a man with a white coat under the warehouse. That was Harry Jones, a local butcher who was a real hard case. I don't know how anybody worked at that time, because most of the people spent their day down watching the shooting of the film. Now here you have Richard No, here you have Gregory Peck speaking to the mate, Starbuck, as Leo Jed, and you have the what would I call the assistant holding the boom over them to pick up their voices. Mrs. McGrath's shop, which was we got ready as the spouters in, and Mrs. Boland standing at the door. Fire Brigade, when Base Hart arrived there, it was lashing rain, and it was the old Fire Brigade was spraying the whole place with water. This is another photograph again of Barry's Lane, looking up towards the clock 8, getting the spouters in ready. Just above that would be the labour exchange, and you see some of the local people that were living there. There's Mrs. O'Brien walking down on the left-hand side, Tony Inglis and Spanner Barnes. Again, you have Gregory Peck again at the helm of the Pequod. Jimmy Harden was part of the labour exchange just above on Barry's Lane there, and his assistant. Here you have John Houston signing the Roll of Honour of the Freeman of Youghal after the shooting was over, and you have the members, some members of the Urban Council. You have Susan Hurley in front, the late Professor Eddie Keane, Mickey Hearn, the Strand Garage, Michael Dominic Broderick, Butcher, South Main Street, Eddie Paul Inch, right next to him, who was the Vice Chairman of the Urban Council. He was member of the All UDC for 50 years. Mick Sullivan, South, in Friar Street, and Jack Daly, the Chairman of the All UDC. And here you have Gregory Peck signing autographs outside the Delphi Hotel, which is now known as the Walter Raleigh. Now there's again an artist's impression of the scene, what the street scene from you would look like in New Bedford. We had seen it previously getting it ready. And on the right hand side there, the people are going into the church. The sermon was preached by Orson Welles. He got £8,000, I think, for preaching it. Jack did, that's a letter from John Houston to Jack Daly, thanking him for the help and cooperation that he got from the all people during the filming, and hope that he said that in all their lifetime they never got such. They have travelled all over the location, and they never met with such friendly people and so cooperative. I'll go now. Yes, here again now you have another photograph of the extras. You have the first gentleman there on the left is gentleman from Waterford, I can't remember his name, Mike Delaney, Morris Welsh, Timmy Crowley, Frank Owens, Patsy Broderick, Frank Owens, and Dick White, and Jim Hurley de Mal. Now you're looking at a mural done by Walter Valley in 1964. It actually took him 7 months to paint it, and it gives an impression of Youghal as it would look in the early, say, in the turn of the century, going into the 1900s. The ship there now that we're just coming up now in the centre, was a model made by Captain Davy. He lived in the Strand, and it was that's a copy of it painted on there. And we had to, the tide is rising, the wind is down from the northwest, the ship is leaving the harbour, and we had to call in some extra old sailors to tell us what sails to hoist. And then on the further down there you have the burden stores, which has 2 stories higher. That's an artist's impression of it, because he had to balance the picture. Underneath it you had this 2-masted ketch. They would be known as the ketch of air, and they would come in with cargoes of coal about 80 tons, and they got through cooperative society and the Cashmore Creamery. This is a modern picture of Youghal with the new quay I took there in 1988. Again, Richard Basehart as Ishmael. Another photograph of more or less the harbour and what it would look at in the old days. And here you have, again looking across the harbour, looking across the pier. From the pier into the Market Square, you have the James Postlethwaite and the Harvest King at the centre. And this is an artist's impression of it, painted by Thomas Hennessy, late of Ballymackey, painted in 1980. '93, and of course the whole place has been changed. At that time, you see now, half of this bar was only the bar, and the other half down here was the room off of the bar, and behind your back then was the butcher shop. And in 1960 we reconstructed the whole place. We had it is the modern bar as you see it today. Peck and Richard Basehart, they all had their drinks, they all had their drink here. But that would be only after hours, because during the day we'd be packed up from 6 o'clock in the morning until 12 o'clock at night. Sometimes when they'd be finished shooting, they'd come in and they would have drinks here, but the place was chock-a-block for the whole 3 weeks that we were filming, and sometimes they had to squeeze their way in.
And so ends the story of Moby Dick in Youghal, 1954. The story was told by Paddy Linehan, who lived closely with the making of Moby Dick.